All right, welcome back to the program. You are watching AM Live. It is Thursday, and if you know it's Thursday, it's all about the global outlook and really what is happening in the region. We begin in Somalia, where there's a bit of activity happening there that really threatens the security even of our nation here in Kenya. Now, last year we did have President of Somalia, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, who declared an all-out war against the Al-Shabaab militants. I think that was about in August 2022, and so the Al-Shabaab militants were really pushed to, out of some of their critical areas. And what we have, however, seen, at least, and if I can get from the reports that we have, here in Kenya, we have seen a number of attacks happening. In less than a month, the Al-Shabaab group has carried out more than 6 attacks. That's in Garissa, we've seen in Wajir and Mandera counties as well, as reported. So it really begs the question to really know why this is happening now and what is happening, because we also know that the African Union's mission in Somalia, that is ATMIS, is beginning its drawback, which is about 2,000 soldiers from Somalia. And that is, that drawdown is now in compliance with the UN resolutions, which mandate ATMIS to draw down about 2,000 soldiers by the end of June 2023. But really, why are we seeing an upsurge in Al-Shabaab attacks really across our border and inside Somalia as well? Let me begin with Dr. Abdi Wahab, because this is something you've also been really closely following up on. Just give us an understanding of the dynamics around that situation and why we're seeing this. Is it really an insurgency, an increase in insurgency or resurgence, I beg your pardon, of the Al-Shabaab? Because we know they've always been there, they've carried their attacks, but the activity is really intensifying.
Zainab, Al-Shabaab is no longer a ragtag militia. Right now, they obtain sophisticated weapons. For the last, let's say, a couple of months, they changed the tactics. They are now, attacking the military installations, specifically the camps, the military camps. And they came with a large number of the fighters, and they start looting the entire camp. They overran just, Somali, army forces in Jana Abdullah, it's almost 40 kilometers from Kismayo. They looted every military hardware there. The same in Masagawai, in central Somalia. They overran the whole, military, camp of Somali military camp. They looted most of the sophisticated weapons. The same thing they have done in Bulamarer, almost 120 kilometers south of Mogadishu, whereby the Ugandan, army station there. The other issue is they have kind of what they call, intelligence gathering. They infiltrated the military, both ATMIS and Somali National Armies. They gather information. They have in fact, they have some network, some connections with military, top military paras. They even is trying to bribe them so that at least they can access what they call the camps. For the last couple of months, I think so, they got a lot of military hardware. A lot of, in fact, most of the researchers now they're saying the fighters are almost between 20 to 25,000. They even increased the number of the fighters. So from today on, they are not ragtag militia. They are trained military, to be honest with you. And the initial, idea was to contain Al-Shabaab within Somalia. But right now, it seems now they are spreading to the regional, it became a regional issue right now. Unless the regional, member states come together and strategize and contain and crush Al-Shabaab, I have no doubt in my mind, maybe a year or so, you will see, a lot of attacks in neighboring states, specifically Kenya, Ethiopia, as well as Djibouti. So this is the situation of today. Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, in fact, declared a war on Shabaab immediately after he came to power. But unfortunately, it was a rhetoric. And in mid last year, there is uprising against Al-Shabaab. Some section of the Somali clans within the central Somalia. We call them Ma'usley. Those guys, they have done a marvelous job. But unfortunately, the government of Somalia has no a proper plan to assist the locals so they can come together and crush those, what you call ruthless militias. Unfortunately, Hassan has no plan to crush what you call Shabaab. In fact, what they have done nowadays is, if they have seen there is a threat against them, they simply withdraw the vicinity, the place. Then they go and capture, they sue the media and a lot of things. And in 2 days' time, they will be back to the same place and crush everybody there. So, unfortunately, what we have seen today is two issues. The issue number one, Al-Shabaab is more stronger than before. Issue number two, they are no longer ragtag militia. They have
sophisticated their structures and the way they conduct
everything. They change right now. So it's up to the regional member states to contain Al-Shabaab or to crush. I think there is no a will to crush Al-Shabaab, honestly speaking. Why I'm saying that? For instance, in ATMIS or AMISOM has been there for 15 years. 15 years. West, if you look at ECOWAS, they have gone to West Africa, in Sierra Leone and also Liberia. In a span of 2 years, they fixed the nation's problems. Today, both Liberia and what you call and Sierra Leone, they have a functioning government. 15 years down the line, AMISOM, they are not even willing to fight. They are there. They are there. In fact, they became a source of providing the weapons to Al-Shabaab, honestly speaking. Honestly speaking, they are there to provide, ammunitions and equipment and military hardware to Al-Shabaab. Because they are there, they are not fighting. What happened? The following morning, they came and attacked the, AMISOM, the scheme force in Somalia, and looted everything there. And that's exactly, they became a source of what they call of livelihood. In fact, they are the one who, in fact, assisting those guys. So let AMISOM be scheme force, international community, Somali army forces, come together and read the same script and have the same plan so that they can easily defeat. But I don't see there is a will to defeat Al-Shabaab. Basically, yes.
Let's hear from Prof. What is your assessment of really the situation, and what does that reflect in terms of even our effort in trying to, as part of AMISOM, perhaps, there in ATMIS in Somalia, trying to keep the peace and secure our borders?
Senab, allow me to give a sort of a global picture first, because it's not only Somalia. There are a number of very vulnerable states that is falling in the same situation. And what Wahid just brought in, sophistication in terms of the terrorism, is very, very serious threat to work with. First is the state fragility. Weak states, that's really non-functioning. The draconian rules, which does not take people in consideration. Complete separation from the citizenry to what the state is saying. That is a very common situation within Africa. And then now you're looking at ecological, environmental, health issues, which are global in nature, but they're impacting us much more seriously because we're not ready. Then susceptibility of international terrorism, the invasion. What is happening in Somalia is not in isolation. There are a lot of active people from the Middle East who are providing a lot of money for their own personal reason, so there are Americans, there are Europeans, who are there. And then the last thing I want to say is what's called man-made. We created, it happened. We arm a mission to fight, to control, a mission provide weapon, secret, some of the weapon secret where they're fighting. What we are looking at is a much more serious situation in the future, Senab. Based on Ukraine-Russian war, these guys are learning a lot what is happening. They're going to start using UV in order to fight. So they will destroy the military fracture that we have put together because they are much more sophisticated intelligently, and they also have much more sophisticated weaponry to fight. Now, we're coming to a solution. It has to be a regional effort.
Right.
Okay. And one thing I've been saying constantly is Putin and Xi Jinping and Biden does not wake up, go to sleep and wake up in the morning thinking about Africa. They must think about their countries first. And therefore we fight to destroy. Then we say, where is the US? And, you know, where's China? Where is Russia? They are primarily focused on their best national interest. And to see what's happening to Ukraine compared to Somalia. And so we have to take care of it ourselves. We have to wake up, we have to go to sleep, we have to wake up in the morning thinking about the solution on what we need to do as Africans.
All right. Bonana Songo is even, you know, you probably add on to that. Then we have this whole issue of ATMIS now that is going to withdraw its troops from Somalia. It has had, perhaps for some who say, look, they've had a really effective engagement there, but those who feel like, you know, the purpose there didn't really yield as much fruit as perhaps would have been wanted. But there is going to be that, you know, drawdown of the soldiers there. Is the Somali government, specifically the Somali army, able to contain what is really a risky situation?
Yeah, that is a very fair observation. And I think Dr. Abdulwahab has actually given where Al-Shabaab is at this time. And it is almost, what Prof was saying, it's an entire political economy, a war economy, that economic agendas within the war. When there is war, there are so many groups that benefit from that, and therefore they do not wish to have peace, including even in regional areas where we are worried about the Kenyan situation. So then you look at this, and we cannot totally condemn. If you look at what is happening in Somalia, Al-Shabaab is almost, in a way, even if it is changing tactics, but they have had a major onslaught than years before. This time round, you know, a combination of US, AFRICOM, and ATMIS, and the regional groups. And now it has also, you know, the way it happens with terrorism is that when there is more pressure, then you dissolve into the population and look for other methods. That is one thing we can say about that. But then the second element is why do we have a drawdown? That if you look at the progress of AMISOM up to transition, is aspects of funding that regional states, in fact, the idea, Zainab, is that if ATMIS exits, then frontline states should be able to continue or to be deployed. That is the neighboring states that are affected by the insecurity in Somalia. I think that's the thinking. But the Africans are arguing that the US has the primary responsibility of international peace and security. And therefore, it should be the UN.
Right.
We are also members of the UN. And therefore, the UN should be able to carry almost 90% of the Somalia burden than the African Union or frontline states. That is one thing on the other side. But then, if you look at Somalia, I'm not very sure. The indications are, I don't think ATMIS will easily leave Somalia until when those who have their interests, the global interests, will feel satisfied that now we think we should sort Somalia. Because Somalia is a state that has, in the world, according to research, if there is any territory that has extreme external actors, interference, and interventions, it is Somalia. All those, Somalia has the largest number of external interests, regional and global, in Somalia. So it's not an easy thing that a mission can easily just transit. We are seeing reducing the numbers. But then alongside the reduction of the numbers, what is happening? We don't know whether it is a message from Al-Shabaab or it is a loophole that attacks are now increasing.
Right.
And as he said, Al-Shabaab is also benefiting from this war economy. It's a commercial activity. And somebody else must also be behind Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is not on its own. There are those who are pulling strings everywhere, as we say in Somalia.
Right.
So what we are seeing is that even as we look at the frontline states, can we really say that Somalia would have been better or the same if the African Union was not there? You know, that's the thinking that we have, that, oh, yes, AMISOM was toothless, has not done much. But what would have been the situation without AMISOM? Because remember, at one time, Somalia had been left to its own devices. The external world, UN intervened twice. UNISOM 1, 2, they failed. The US came in, under, I think, UNITAF, they failed. AMISOM has resiliently, you know, engaging communities and the rest, made some changes, you know, removing this violence against people in Mogadishu. Now, some quarters are saying, in fact, the conflict in Somalia is now moving towards maybe a better way of ending it, in the sense that Al-Shabaab are now focusing on their own belligerents, the security forces. Let them not slaughter the innocent people. Let them have that engagement with the security forces, almost making the conflict conventional. It's now a battle. And as Doka said, it is because Al-Shabaab now feel emboldened that they have also sophisticated weapons to match the troops in almost a conventional conflict. Right. Initially, they were slaughtering vulnerable people because they could not match them. They could not face them. So if that is the case, then we should be able not even to draw down. I think this is the time now. We should increase the numbers and have a more impact, because Al-Shabaab is doing that. I think their new tactic is, let us have as many troops attacking a base, so that even if they kill 100, and we have calculated they are almost 120, we will overrun them. And that's what they have used.
Their deadliest, by the way, being the 54 soldiers who were killed, part of the Uganda military.
Yes.
I think that had their, you know, camp set in, I think it is Shabelle region, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And that was, I think, one of the deadliest attacks since these offensives began in last year.
Yes, remember, 800 against around 200 or 120. That's a tactic.
Right.
And then they have another tactic of making, you know, they study. You look at Kenya, they study the routes. They use like twin ambushes. You know, the target is Prof. But we know that Dr. Abdulahad is the one patrolling. So we challenge him slightly. It look like we have lost. And when Prof comes in as emergence, he's the one we hit. And it is happening continuously even in Kenya there. So I agree with my colleagues that it is not an easy aspect, that we can now think regionally that, okay, leave Somalia again to its own devices.
Right.
Because I think, Zainab, for some time, we don't know whether it is tactical. Sometimes we give Al-Shabaab too much, but I think there was a slight lull. There were no major Al-Shabaab attacks in the region until when we started talking about transitioning and getting out, and now we are seeing attacks in Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya.
Yes, yes, Prof.
The issue here, Zainab, is Al-Shabaab are highly mobile. They're highly sophisticated. They understand the timing very well. Yeah. They know when to lay low. They know when there is a gap for them to rise. And here's the point I've been making all along. Somalia need to be integrated as part of the East Africa community, so that this become a fight, the East African fight, not Somalia fight. Because Somalians are everywhere. They're in Uganda, they're in Kenya, they're everywhere. So who is here in Kenya? Why are we having the refugees camp that refugees camps need to be integrated. Those who want to live in Somalia, want to live in Kenya, need to live here. And then we need to have a combined, highly mobile, highly sophisticated force, which is now being trained in Rwanda, and funded primarily by the East African community nations, and then UN, AU support. But don't look at UN and say, why is UN not coming? Who is funding UN? You know, it's mostly American because of their GDP, you know, and European nations. And therefore, we cannot expect them to be spending the kind of money and resources in Europe to come here in Africa and spend on our behalf. Al-Shabaab will affect all development within the East Africa community, irrespective of...
All right. And I want us to look at then how, in what essence are we going to begin fighting this? Because look, just within the past 2 weeks, we as Kenya, as a country, we've lost at least 22 officers in attacks in Garissa and Lamu. Now, a day ago, we had the Defense Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale speak about, you know, acquiring new artillery in terms of the police service and defense. Will this be? I want us to have a look at what the Defense Cabinet Secretary had to say and try and analyze really if this is going to be the effective solution into dealing with the Al-Shabaab insurgency within our borders as a country. Yes, let's have that. There is
a serious modernization program, both for the National Police Service and for Kenya Defense Forces. We are ready and we are investing to buy equipment in the next 3 months that will help even deter the IEDs the terror groups are using. We are buying more sophisticated APCs. We will buy more other equipment in the war against terror. Kenya will never fall. We can never be intimidated by terrorists. We will not. Kama wewe ni chief, unakaa station yako. Kama wewe ni DO, unakaa station yako. Kama wewe ni mfanyikazi wa serikali, hata ukiwa uluko, utakaa uluko. Mambo ya security sisi tutalinda, lakini kama wafanyikazi wa serikali wenyewe hawakai station yao, wanatoroka, kwani mnawachia station sababu wakae? Every government official must stay in the location, in the sub-location, in the division, in the sub-county. He has been told and has been posted as a government public official.
So that's the Defense Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale speaking about what is really an intensified insurgency here in the country. He's talking about buying sophisticated weaponry for the police service and the KDF in dealing with the Al-Shabaab menace here in the country. Dr. Abdi Wahab, is this going to be the solution? Looking at the Al-Shabaab militia has their own operatives operating within our border, inside, you know, some of the areas there. They are gathering intelligence, and that is why they're able to, you know, put the ID explosives where they know that, you know, the military is passing this way. It really isn't a coincidence that they're able to attack all these police military vehicles just by coincidence, really.
Zainab, you know, one thing you must understand. You know, there's a significant number of the fighters of Al-Shabaab who originate from Kenya. They train our sons and daughters inside the camps. When they heard the neighboring countries are organizing, you know, sort of, you know, military operation, now they're sending a signal to neighboring states. We can harm you guys. But one thing, you know, I'm going to correct my prof here. East African community, as we speak right now, they are there. Troop contributing countries, mainly from East Africa. The people on the ground are saying, if the integration of East African, you know, country, anything to go by, why right now their own forces are inside Somalia. Right now, frontline states, yes. That's Burundi, Kenya, Ethiopia, all of them there. Why can't you at least fight and assist what you call Somali National Army, rather than just staying in the military, you know, specific installations? That's the question they ask in Somali community themselves. 50 years are there. Why don't you, let me tell you one thing. 22,000 African peacekeeping force, plus American proxy forces, plus regional member states forces, failed to defeat what you call such kind of militia for the last 50 years. It's questionable. People are asking for. So, what is going right? What has changed right now? Let me share with you. Let me enlighten also what is going on today inside Somalia. The biggest obstacle we see right now in Somalia is what they call proxy forces. There is a lot of conflict of interest among the international communities. The issue is, there is a different country are training different, section of the Somali army forces. Turkish, they're training Somali army forces. UAE, now they start training 10,000. Egypt, they are training another one. Uganda, they are training also. They are not even reading the same. These forces, we call our proxy forces. How come is that, a training of 3 months? Right now, there's 3,000 now, they train in Uganda. They went back to Somalia under the command of the United Arab Emirates. So those under United Arab Emirates, they're answerable to Emirates rather than Somali National Army. So how are they going to fight? AMISOM, Kenya, Ethiopia, Burundi, they are reading the same script. They are not coordinating. They don't have any cooperation at all. So there's a lot of interest a lot of conflict of interest.
Right.
Unless international actors come together and have a unified plan, they cannot defeat. And they are not even willing to do that. Most of the international partners, they see their own interest, weak, fragmented and fragile Somalia. And that itself, it have a problem to neighboring states.
Do you think this will change if Somalia then joins the East African community, because they're just steps away from officially being part of the EAC? Does that change anything?
And I don't think so, because already they are there. Right. If they're going to assist them right now. Up to now they are there. Right. So what are going to continue? Let me tell you one thing. A Kenyan army forces are there. Burundian army forces are there. Why can't they fight? Until the Tanzanians and the DRC come back, until they came.
All right.
Until they come.
Okay, yes, Prof.
The East African Command,
right,
which we're training in Rwanda, and which is hopefully going to be the base of East Africa, is a unified force representing all the East African countries. And, my colleagues are right. What is it that Turkey want? What is it that all these Middle Eastern people want? What is it that American want? What is it? So the issue is for Somali to be integrated part of East Africa, such that the East Africa provide a unified force. And let me emphasize and underline a very important fact. It is not the weapon that we buy. I study military strategy for years.
Right.
That the cabinet secretary is talking about. It is the intelligence. It is knowing who you want to fight, according to General Sew. Unless you know that, you're dropping weapon on top of the tree, and all those people are gone. Because they know exactly when you move, when you sleep, when you wake up, and everything. So what are you fighting? Look at the lesson. Look at the lesson of Ukraine-Russia war. Who knew that a small state like Ukraine can hold Russia for over 1 year? Not because they're given support from the West and everything, but Ukrainians are very sophisticated because they understand Russia better. And they're crushing them. They're going to the yoke of Russia. And they're making Putin look horrible. Now, that's what Shabaab is doing. It doesn't matter how many weapons you provide and how many people are there. They know exactly the division and the conflict these all people are having. And so they exploit that conflict and defeat you. in the process. So my point is, Kenya cannot be free and develop. Tanzania cannot be free and develop. Uganda cannot, unless we can settle this situation in Somalia.
Right. Bwana Muliro.
Yeah, I just remembered that I didn't address your question on the Somali National Army, and he reminded me that actually the biggest challenge now is what doctrine will the Somali National Army use? And this gives you the answer that they are not ready, because they have many doctrines, those from African states, from Turkey, from Arab, China, Russia. And somebody even asked, the Somali National Army has a challenge of logistics. If these people pull out, because they have Chinese weapons, they have Turkey, they have all those arrangements. So they are not ready. And that's why we are saying the drawdown may be just an indicator, but it will be rethought, the exit of ATMIS. And then number two is the coordination there, which the doc here has also talked about. You know, AFRICOM, the US, we have been questioning ourselves, and they answered that. Why do they always say they had intelligence, but they do not share with the African troops? And they answered and said that our fear is that the African troops are highly infiltrated by the Al-Shabaab, as you say.
Correct.
If we share our intelligence, then we will be in danger. So always, even they say the Ugandan attack, they were aware.
Right.
But then they were so late that by the time they hit and killed, were they 40 or 15 Al-Shabaab? The rest had already left to go and attack the other end.
Right.
But they had the intelligence, but they are so that coordination, and even our own East Africa that Doc is talking about, they are just, the umbrella is, yes, it's ATMIS, AMISOM, but everybody has been given a sector where they have interest to control. So they're like autonomous troops under the African Union. So you carry your own interest as you enter Somalia to protect your own defense at home. So that's the challenge there, and therefore, to answer you, Zainab, the Somali National Army, I agree with the doc here that they are not ready. They have been polluted. In fact, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to see them, which doctrine, military doctrine, are they going to implement to deal with Al-Shabaab.
Right. And probably, yes, just to mention here, by the way, we actually had an update about maybe about 8 hours ago, and this was a statement that was released by the National Intelligence and Security Agency in Somalia, saying together with their international partners, which include Kenya, by the way, carried out an operation in the Yunbis area, that's the lower Shabelle region, and they've managed to kill about over 40 Al-Shabaab militants. So that's one of the developments that they're saying, that the operation began last night, inflicting heavy casualties of Al-Shabaab. 40 fighters were killed, and they've destroyed their hideout. However, there are some who still managed to escape. Yes, Doc.
You know, the question Somalis are asking for up to now, if ATMIS are there,
right,
they don't go into conventional war, just there within the military facility, within the, what they call the camps, within the barracks. So, as I'm saying, even if they left today, that doesn't make any change. No different at all.
But isn't
some people
the purpose...
Let me finish.
Right.
Some people are saying, in fact, they are the ones who supplying the weapons to those guys.
Allegedly.
Yes, that's what they say. People are saying that. Case, you know, classical example is Bulamarer, what do you call the Ugandese. They already loot everything there. They looted everything there. So basically, unless we Africans, we are serious about this issue, unless we are going to combine our notes, unless we are come together and you have a unified army against these people, we will not defeat them. Take it from me, that one.
Right.
How can we do that?
So we change tact.
How can we do that? Let African brothers and sisters come together. African problems for African solution. That is, let's revive that spirit. And they come together, seriously matter. We don't, there is a lot of, external actors also involved in Somalia. Well,
now, how I managed to do that, despite all this external influence and factors that you say, are we able to overcome those factors?
Regional member states, let them come together and discuss the issue.
Right.
This is now or never. Honestly speaking, things are getting out of hand. So if you don't come together and address the issue the way it is, then only God can save us. Simple as that.
Right.
But Zaina, just 1 minute is that as much as we say that about ATMIS, their focus was mostly about protection of civilians, because I remember you talked about that on DRC. Where are the people as we talk of Al-Shabaab and the rest? So even as Doc talks about if they leave, there is no change. But the people on the ground have found that their presence helped in the sense that haphazard slaughter of civilians. Now the change is on military war rather than daily, civilians were helpless.
Yeah. All right. Prof, we have to take a break. I'll come back to you in a moment. But when we do come back, we'll have a conversation just briefly on this issue of opening our borders. That has been another big issue. Some say this is a fantastic idea and this is the right time. But there's also a question on, do we have the structures? In the midst of all these things that are happening right now, do we have proper structures to open the common border points with Somalia? This happened on the backdrop of a high-level consultation meeting that happened between Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki, that's Interior Cabinet Secretary, and his Somali counterpart Mohammed Ahmed Sheikh, who've agreed on that, perhaps in the next, I believe, 3 months. So let's take a quick break here on AM Live. Talk to us. We're going to be back in a short while.
He healed that lady, that woman of 12 years of bleeding. He's here today. The same supernatural healing that took place at this time, today it is taking place in Jesus' name. Bible says it's the same yesterday. Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I prophesy to you. This is your day. This is your hour. This is your moment. Receive your healing in Jesus' name. Can I hear somebody say more fire? Somebody shout cheese. Supernatural healing.
Step into a world where sustainability meets prosperity at the Wheat Expo. Join us in Eldoret on June 29th to 30th, 2023 at the Central Primary Grounds opposite Zion Mall. Discover sustainable wheat cultivation and indulge in interactive sessions. Our farmers balance innovation and tradition to grow nutritious wheat. To partner with us by way of exhibition and advertising, contact Christopher on 0723 401 003. Let's cultivate a healthier, wealthier nation. Embrace sustainable farming at the Wheat Expo.
My mother told her that. She didn't know what it meant to be a mother. Diego, did you know that your aunt had lost a baby girl?
My aunt had a daughter?
That's what she told her.
First time I've heard of it.
Her mother, Robert De Niro, she's not going to leave Chato. The best thing is to accept the fact there's nothing we can do.
Then why don't you just kidnap her?
Because that would be madness.
He has 3 other women somewhere else, doesn't he?
And how do you know that?
I just guessed it. But that's exactly how he can help us.
Head over heels.
2 out of 3 Kenyan parents felt that they don't spend enough quality time with their kids. You can help change this by giving a generous voice to Storytime. Visit our library of homegrown audio stories at cadbury.africa and make Storytime sweeter.
Nunua KPLC tokens, Bela charges. Only on Airtel Money. Dial *334#. select Lipa na Airtel Pay Bill, then select KPLC.
Do not hold back in any situation. Eno gets to work on the 6 symptoms of heartburn fast.
You do know you said all of that out loud, right?
If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
All right, welcome back to the conversation on what is happening across the region and, of course, how that impacts our security here as a nation in Kenya. And there was a high-level consultation in March earlier this year, a meeting held in Nairobi between Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki and his Somalia counterpart Mohamed Ahmed Sheikh, who agreed to officially open the common border points between the two countries in the next couple of months. And now, this conversation of opening border points has also elicited quite a reaction. In fact, in an opinion editorial here, on the Daily Nation, this gentleman known as Oscar Amadi, he's a security expert, who says reopening of Somalia border points may be a miscalculation. And he goes on to just describe how that really is a miscalculation, saying that following this, according to Nairobi, the recent decisions in line with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is aimed at promoting intra-African trade and therefore a significant step towards that. However, really, how does that impact the diplomatic relations between the two countries? And the opening of the border will lead to job creation, of course, but the border has been problematic since the fall of General Siad Barre regime in 1991. It goes on to talk about, a newspaper that revealed in 2014 that Dadaab is more than a refugee camp. It's a smuggling hub for sugar and all these things. And anyway, so many things is talked about. But anyway, this is just an opinion of one individual. There's still so many things and the dynamics around that particular issue that comes to place when we have that conversation. So I'll begin with you, Prof. What do you make of this, issue of opening our border points with Somalia in the backdrop of ATMIS having a drawdown of soldiers and an insurgency of Shabaab in parts of the country?
Sign up.
Are we ready for that?
Africa has to be realistic. We are over 60 years of independence from colonialism. We have to think, we have to reflect on Africa and Africans stepping forward to take care of its territory. Because the outsiders are not coming here to build. They're not coming here for fun. They're coming for extraction of goods that we have in order to enrich their countries. This is the issue. Now, so the question at this moment, Africa is trading with itself at 15%. Asia is trading with itself at 50%. Europe is trading with itself at 75%. Dangote is one of the biggest investors in Africa. And Dangote can create a lot of goods and employment throughout the continent of Africa. And when you have people with the mission like that committed, then why are we blocking our border? Why are we asking for visa from employees who are working for Dangote to come in the country? What kind of money are we getting out of visa? And the bigger picture we are forgetting. Secondly, I'm teaching 55 students at Cavendish University in Uganda. They're from 11 countries around Africa, from Nigeria to Ghana to Djibouti to Somalia to Rwanda to DRC Congo. They're all together. There are about 4 generals who are sitting. These are very senior people, immigration and the police and all that kind of thing. And my focus has been to sift them to think like an African and act like an African for the best interest of Africa. What's the solution? There is no solution when Somalia and Kenya are fighting over the water in the border. That is not solved. It's taken to the international court. Why? Why can't we solve it as East Africa community so that we move ahead? Why can't we develop the most sophisticated, intelligent group such that we can pinpoint and go after those people? Because Al-Shabaab is not a visitor here. They're part and parcel of what we are.
All right.
They have a power right now. They're getting taxes out of people, and people are convinced, the population, my friend here will say, population are convinced they're not going anywhere because we are not going to stop them. And they are embodied to go anywhere. With UVA, with the experience in Ukraine, they will become much more lethal in the future. Unless we can commit intelligent, train the people, get at the source, understand where they're coming from, who's funding them, how they manage themselves, and eliminate that as people, as African people, not as UN, not as American, not as that's what we have to do.
So African solutions to African problems.
That's correct.
Yes, Bwana Muliro, opening our border points, it's quite a good thing. It encourages our diplomatic, engagement, and also in terms of our free trade area, and helping Africa grow as a nation together. But there's still those challenges that are lacking. Then how do we go about that?
Yeah, it's you're right. You and Prof are almost agreeing that there's the struggle of, on one side, economics, and on the other side, security.
Right.
So when you look at the border, you look at that. Which one should be prioritized? Because the stories we are being given is the African Continental Free Trade Area. We want to encourage trade and the rest. We are going by the AU border program of borderless, remove visas, and we want to do a very good thing. But we are in a context where we need to ask ourselves that why did we close the border in the first case? Was it because of economic sabotage or because of security interests? And you'll find that it is because of security. But then, listening to our CS defense, then you will learn a few things. The first one is, 2 things in fact. The first one is the sequence of preparedness. What he's saying should have happened before opening the borders. That we should have equipped our soldiers. They have talked about, they have put bases, along the borders. We should have prepared our military well, our people, community intelligence, across the borders. Because it's one community, the Somalis, sharing the Nyumba Kumi thing, crossing the borders. And then the second thing that tells you is that our military logistics and weaponry is not effective. It's not modernized. We are talking about that now because Al-Shabaab has shown us that if you move ahead with an armored vehicle, we hit it, we know it will not be hit, but we know that's the only one that you have. The rest are in a Probox or a Land Cruiser, the KDF people, and they're the ones we will kill. That's what happened in Lamu. So therefore, the sequencing of the opening the border in terms of security first, then we can do our economic interest was not well done. I think we should have prepared so well. When the minister talks like that, we get worried. Actually, there is something that GLOSEPS is looking at, why we should be worried that there's a resurgence of Al-Shabaab following the opening of the borders. Because the reasons we are given, Zainab, for opening the border is that it will create more security, in the sense that if you control, they were copying from Mexico and US, that if you control the borders, in fact, I support the idea that that physical border, it was not necessary. So many, I think, Profi and others have written a lot and saying, in future, you'll find that this physical border will affect your trade interests with Somalia. And you can see a lot of money wasted. It will not happen, that physical border.
Right.
In that case. But then they believe that if you have legal way of controlling movement of people, by way of opening the borders, you'll manage contrabands and smuggling of weapons and the rest. But then, what is a border, you know? Those are arbitrary territories. These are one people. So it just needs, you know, it's not like we're in these rooms, Zainab, and we say now this is the border, you cannot jump over the fence.
I mean, it's what, perhaps it's just a vast land that you can't really define, that this is where the border lies. So it's an imagined border, right?
Yes, imagine that how even, you know, border is in terms of even physical and the social.
Right.
How do you put a border between our own, you know, Maasais in Kenya and Tanzania?
Right.
Or our own Somalis in Kenya and their
neighbors. Share the same culture.
Or our people, Luyas and the Ugandans, you know.
It's quite
they don't know that. They continue
difficult,
trading.
Yeah.
Yes, you are saying something.
Right, yes. Yeah, no, I was done. Yes, Prof. Very quickly as we wind up on this.
We're in the 21st century.
Right.
We're in the 5th industrial revolution.
Right.
We are at a point where we use data and information. If you look at the Israel borders, between Gaza Strip and this, Israel has a balloon flying over there 24/7, collecting every information, who is moving in, what goods they have. And you see the pinpoint in terms of hitting back at Al-Shabaab, you know, at the Gaza, you know, that Israel has done. And so I argue against creating this buffer, this border, because somebody else is going to extract money out of it and put in their pocket.
Right.
And then somebody will come with the bulldozer and knock it down.
Okay.
And no repair. It will be gone. So if we have to buy something, why don't we use balloon to fly throughout the East Africa to look at the movement of goods and services, where there's this congestion, what we can do in order to improve that, and who is importing these short arms that are flowing into East Africa, where they're coming from. And so that we need, that is an intelligent work. That's not a force. That's not a military people with a pickup.
Right.
We just had cattle rustling in Kenya.
Right.
And then a force went there, a big force. But the next day, the rustlers are attacking. And so we wonder, what are they going there for?
It's a complete shift in terms of strategy and
it's a disaster.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move forward on
one
to...
minute.
Yes,
I'm going
Doc.
to add a few things here. And if you look at West Africa, they don't have border problems at all compared to East Africa. Do you know why? The people at the border, they are the ones who are managing the border themselves.
Yeah.
Are we together? These are artificial borders drawn by the colonialists. African continent is just one continent, one people. These artificial borders we have to remove, both physically and mentally. That empower the people at the border to manage their own borders. Then, with the help of the security, personnel, the security they can even, have, military camps along the border. Very, well-equipped, camps along the border. The people they manage. That's Africa. They can trade together. But constructing a wall, as Prof put it, doesn't have anything. So the only thing is, empower our own people, let them manage the border. That's what I'm going to add.
All right. Because we actually have very little time left as well, there was that other issue that we had put aside to have a conversation as well on. It is on the development in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And now there's actually a report from the United Nations. It's a report that is now accusing, once again, Kigali of supporting M23 rebels there. Rwanda being in the hot seat again following the release of that UN report documenting what they term as direct interventions of its military forces in the Eastern Congo. Congo. It's the final account to the world body, the group of experts on the DRC sharing mounting evidence of Rwandan support for the M23 rebel group that has been wreaking havoc across the eastern region. It's a damning report warning of worsening attacks on civilians and a heightened risk of political instability. And this is actually coming ahead of planned elections that is expected to happen in December of this year. Let me begin with you, Muliro. What do you think of the happening so far on the situation, security deteriorating situation that continues to even just get worse in DRC? We have an election. Will this happen really?
Yeah, the last part is correct. That's the inquiry everybody is asking. Will we actually have this election? And DRC, I saw that report, and actually what has caught my eye is the American response.
Right.
There is the France responded, trying to openly also supporting that actually Rwanda should pull out its troops and stop also supporting M23. But the US were very forthright, they accused Rwanda straightforward and said, in fact, there are links to the ISIS. They are calling the rebel group the Allied Democratic Forces that is fighting in Uganda. They are calling it ISIS DRC. They call it actually ISIS DRC. And they were very straight, again, hitting at Rwanda, Zainab. And this tells you two things. When we were looking at, it has just reminded me, Prof, that when we think about Somalia joining East Africa, we just turned the DRC, a very good idea that economically DRC come to EAC. But we forgot that when you bring DRC, it comes with its aspects of security challenges.
Right.
The same thing will be with Somalia. Join EAC, come with the aspects, and how are you ready to deal with that? And something has emerged, Zainab, that DRC now almost, the membership of DRC is almost not uniting, but now divisive, in the sense that Rwanda is a key player in EAC, but then it is now bringing out clearly the interests of Rwanda and interventions in DRC.
Correct.
And the report of the experts from the UN clearly tells you that maybe the US, Rwanda is almost losing that. The US strong, talking about Rwandan troops are interfering with peace and is not just supporting the idea of M23. And so they are linking that to another resurgence of terrorism in EAC. So when we hear global powers start talking of a group is now terrorist, is an aspect that is telling you, as you say, we don't know whether it is playing in the hands of Tshisekedi. He'll easily say now we are in the dangers of terrorism, we will not have the elections. But on the other side, they are using this purging, because the people that we are calling the Eastern Congo and the M23 have roots. That's the same story that Abdulwahab, Pan-Africanist, is talking. We are all Africans. They have roots in Rwanda. And that's a very strong voting bloc that is never with Tshisekedi. And therefore, we are looking at the UN report and asking, after that, after calling out, so what? What have they done in terms of identifying that Rwanda has been the thorn in the flesh in the efforts to bring peace in DRC, rather than just raising and heightening more tensions between regional states and then going back to sit?
Yes, Dr. Abdulwahab, yes.
DRC Congo, Sudan, Somalia never expect any stability because the resource became scarce. Northern Kivu and the Ituri provinces, they have more than 120 militias. Just every country which is neighbor to Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Angola, Uganda, they have also their own forces. M26 is who's going to support them. Kagame himself. What about the Allied Democratic Forces? What about the Mai militias? What about what you call those guys called? Yeah, all those are in fact, it's been funded and financed by some section of the international community. And Ituri province and North Kivu province of what they call of Congo. These are most affected areas, whereby literally every ethnic group has its own militia. Who is taking them? You know, as we speak right now, 186 mining companies are mining inside there. So it's all literally everybody's there. Western Europe are there, Americans are there, Chinese are there, you know, Russians are there. You know, everybody's there. Is mining. That's why you never expect any stability. It's you know, when the war broke out in 1996 to way back to 1996 up to now, more than 6 million people have been killed. More than another 5.7 million people, you know, it's been displaced. More than 1 million people of Congolese now, they are seeking a refugee in neighboring states.
That which is a quite serious humanitarian crisis.
It
which will certainly
surely.
affect the rest of the region.
Yeah.
Right.
It is surely. It's, you know, it became, you know, sexual violations, you know, rape, you know, killing. It became all of the day. All of the day. Africans, they don't have any mercy from other people. Unless we come together, discuss our own issues, no one cannot assist us. No one cannot assist us.
Right.
People that are coming all the way from Europe, they're coming from Russia, from China, from Arab world, just they came here to loot our resources, nothing else. So Africans, we are totally, you know, disorganized. Unless we come together, think proper, what can we do our people? How can we, you know, uplift our society? Will remain like this forever.
All right. Prof, yes.
In comparison, Zainab, Siad Barre was the only leader that temporarily pulled Somalia together. General Mobutu was the only leader that pulled Congo together with the support, you know, from sponsors who later on turned against him and killed him. Congo, DRC Congo, has potential $25 trillion worth of mineral, the same size of the U.S. economy. And what are we fighting for? There are interests from all around the world. There are people who have their own force there. You know, this force from Russia will soon move in and cave there. Unless we can bring Congo in, unless we can settle M23 as the East Africa, M23 can be integrated in the Congolese military, not as an outsiders that have come in. Because when you look at the situation right now, Uganda is exporting more gold. Uganda doesn't have gold. Where is it coming from? Burundi is exporting other things. You know, Rwanda is. They're extracting, just like everybody else are extracting in Congo. And so let's revise that and said, now you want to do legitimate business, fine, in Congo. Whether you are Rwandese, whether you are Kenyans, whether you are Ugandans or a Tanzania, you can travel and do legitimate business. And so we stop this pilferage that are coming in and blaming Paul Kagame. Paul Kagame is the only, one of the only stable leaders that has taken a country that was fall apart and is making substantive progress. People don't give him credit for that. But he is like everybody else. He needs resources. And so if he's affiliated with M23 that are bringing resources, you are not just going to cut that easily and say, no, now you stop interfering. There should not be any question regarding election. Election need to happen so that at least as possible, the right person is elected so that we don't abuse the term limit like what we have done elsewhere in Africa.
Right. We're almost out of time. I just want to get final remarks. I'll begin with you, Muliro, as a region. And I mean, by the way, have you seen any correlation between then Uganda's involvement in its military intervention in the DRC isn't part of the DRC, and also some of the accusations that Uganda is part of those who are probably benefiting from the resources in DRC, allegations, and why we've seen ADF, which is now a terrorist named group, make its attack in a secondary school in Uganda, actually one of the worst happening in recent times.
Yes, all those networks that my colleagues have talked about, and it's a very good observation that it's just almost a replica of what has happened in Somalia. So Uganda is inside there. All these groups, even when they came in through the East Africa Regional Force, they already had bilateral interventions, agreements with DRC to intervene. So Uganda had interest to fight a group that is saying we are a democratic, allied democratic force fighting operation in Uganda. Rwanda, even as we blame, Kagame, there is the FDLR that says they are fighting for democratic liberation of Rwanda, and they are based in DRC.
Right.
So he's pursuing them. You look at even Angola itself, you look at even Burundi.
Burundi,
yes. Burundi also, there is a group in DRC that is fighting them. So when we see a backlash of ADF, the same Abdulwahid that you are talking about, the external forces are playing a chessboard. Uganda, you are passing things that are not interesting to us, you are trying to be defiant. Then, in fact, Zainab, you should throw the net wider and look at even the law they passed is what Uganda has looked like it is defying strongly its international allies.
Correct.
And then it must, then we have a proxy that must teach them a lesson, because these groups are maintained actually to be pulled by other powers, externally. But just as you have given us the final remarks, I would want to come back home and say something that as we look at it lightly, that there is, after a time when we had a narrative in Kenya that was emerging that we have won the war against terrorism, and then we are seeing now a resurgence, we shouldn't take it lightly, because it indicates a few things which the government must be able to look at. In one case is the logistics and equipment of our military. Another one is the morale of our security of officers, because the economic situation has changed, and these officers, we have not remunerated them, we have not improved their welfare.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Abdulwahab, very quickly as we wind up, just you have less than a minute actually.
Thank you. What is going on in Congo is just a looting.
Right.
Nothing short of that. Unless the East African community understand the internal dynamics of the Congo and do about something, Congo remain the way it is. Yeah, that's my
final
parting shot.
All right.
Yeah.
And Prof, very quickly as well.
Nabu, Africans' problem will only be solved by Africans, legitimately. Otherwise, nothing else, nothing new will happen.
Right. And that is your parting shot.
That's my parting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Noah Midamba, in this context, defense and foreign policy. Prof. Dr. Abdiwahab Abdusamad, who's the chair of the Institute Horn of Africa Strategic Studies, and Nasongo Muliro, who's a foreign policy and security expert from GLOSEPS. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. I hope and I wish we had more time, and there's still also so much that is happening in Sudan as well. New fighting despite a truce that was called just a day ago. So that is what else is happening in across our continent here in Africa. But still, I think we need more time to have this conversation. Hopefully next week we'll be able to see what other developments have been happening across the region. My name is Zainab Ismail. Thank you so much for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. But also I was trying to get a tweet here, Prof. Someone was referring to you, asking if you've ever been a soldier before. I don't know, I've lost that tweet. He says your input is quite interesting, because it appears that you might have been a soldier at one point in your life. Were you?
No, I just learned military strategy.
All right, then you have yourself a good morning and good Thursday.
I'm a student, General Shu.